So our exterior tour with the maintenance supervisor or longest standing tech is completed. The next thing we want to do is visit the vacants. Now, this involves going only to the buildings that you have vacants in. If you're in a high rise, you're only going to go to those floors. But the buildings that have vacants are our primary concern right now. So we want to visit our vacants. But before you head out, you're going to say, "Excuse me, assistant manager or longest standing leasing consultant, will you accompany me to tour the vacants?" And our reason for asking the assistant manager or longest standing leasing consultant to accompany us on this tour is very similar to our reason for asking the maintenance super to accompany us. We are doing multiple steps here. So not just taking a tour of the vacants, you're also letting your agent or assistant manager know that their knowledge of the community is needed and appreciated. That's good rapport. And you're also going to gather a little bit of information about your assistant manager or your leasing consultant. And especially if it's the leasing consultant, you should be able to gather a little bit about maybe their selling or leasing style. Not something you're going to address at this moment. You should just make mental note and pay attention to their style. And again, this tour with your assistant manager or leasing agent is not about asking them personal questions. It is about finding out information about the units or the property. And of course, you guessed it, we are going to take some very detailed notes while we do our vacant tour. And I know what you're thinking, more notes, we got to go out and take more notes. Yes, but I assure you, if you do this process that I'm telling you to do, it's going to make your life a lot easier when it's time to come through and clean up that property. But remember, on this tour, we are only visiting the buildings or floors that have vacants. Unfortunately, if you have a vacant in all of the buildings, you should visit all of the buildings. But to make life a little easier, start with the buildings that have the most vacants. The first thing we want to make note of are the entryways. If you have a community and they have entry doors to get into the building, you want to make sure that those doors are functioning properly. If they have locks on them, you want to make sure that the locks work. That is a heaven for loiterers. People love to loiter in the hallways of buildings. If the building is supposed to have a locked door, make sure that door is functioning properly. Make sure the door is not off the hinge in any way. And this isn't necessarily a tenant issue that's doing this, but sometimes when people are moving in and out, they'll prop open a door, and of course the hinge will get a little loose. So you just want to make sure that the entry door open and close properly. And if there is a lock on the door, make sure that lock is functioning. The next item we want to make note of are broken mailboxes. If mailboxes are inside the building, some people have that. If they're outside, that's not what we're talking about. That would be a note that you make with your first tour with the maintenance supervisor of the exterior. If you have mailboxes located inside the buildings, you want to make sure those aren't broken and hanging off. And I'm just naming things that I've seen. So you just want to make sure mailboxes aren't falling off or hanging off. You want to make sure that looks appropriate if you are taking a prospect in. Nothing worse than going in and seeing graffitied mailboxes, mailboxes not locked. It's unattractive. So it's these little things that will make your property look a bit better, and it shouldn't cost a lot of money to do that. That's the second thing you want to make note of. You want to make note also, number 3, you want to also make note of any worn out rugs, carpets, or tiles when you walk into the door. If it looks haggard and worn, you want to make note of that. Sometimes it can be a heavy traffic building that's causing that. And 9 times out of 10, the wear and tear will lead to the door that it's coming from. But we'll get to doors in a second. So those are our top 3 things so far that we want to check for. We want to look for broken entry doors. We want to check for any broken mailboxes if they are inside the building. And then the third thing you want to check for is worn out carpet or tile in the hallways or common areas of the building. So is everybody with me so far? It is all going to come together, but we have a few more things we want to make note of. We're nowhere near done on our interior and vacant tour. If your property has laundry rooms inside the building or any storage rooms, I would check those next. I would make sure doors are functioning properly, locks are functioning properly, check if the laundry rooms are trashed, check to make sure that the machines look like they're functioning properly. No, we don't have time to run the machines and make sure they're okay, but we want to at least make sure they're not broken up or torn up. Again, these are little things that you can do that should cost minimal money to make the property look nice for a prospect. The next thing I would make note of is any excessive noise. You're going to hear maybe, especially if the building is old, walls are thin, you're going to hear some normal noise. I'm talking excessive noise, especially loud talking or profanity. Always imagine that you're walking into the building with a prospect. Would you be embarrassed taking a prospect to see this vacant in the building with this excessive noise coming from the apartment? That is a surefire, well, if the prospect is high value, that is a surefire way to lose them. No one wants a loud neighbor. So I would mark any excessive noise coming from the apartment. Don't knock on anybody's door. That's not what we're doing. You're just making note right now. That's all we're doing. Everybody still with me? Let's continue. Next item on the list, the same as the exterior. You want to make sure there's no loitering taking place inside the building. How embarrassing to take a prospect in and people are sitting maybe on the steps and you have to say, excuse me, to get through, to get to this vacant that you're trying to lease to this high quality, high value prospect. Loitering inside the building, especially inside laundry rooms, storage rooms, any tuckaways, no loitering. So you want to make note of loitering that's taking place in the building. Next up, you should make note of any trash or trash bags sitting outside of apartment doors. A lot of times people can't go right to the dumpster, but they don't want the trash to sit inside the apartment, so they'll place it outside. Would you like to take a prospect past the neighbor's trash to go show them the vacant? Absolutely not. So you just want to make note of any trash or trash bags sitting outside of apartment doors. And then there's my favorite. The condition of the front of the apartment door, the doors to the unit. You want to jot down filthy doors. Dirty front doors will always be your smoking gun. If the dirt is down low, below the doorknob, it's probably a pet or a little one. No problem. But if it's filthy from the doorknob up to about the peephole, if you have one, it's probably a high traffic apartment. I am going to repeat that. Most people overlook the telltale signs of a troubled apartment. You will know the problem apartment in the building by the condition of the front door. Run it back if you need to. If the dirt is from the doorknob and below, it's a pet or it's a little one. No problem. If the filth is from the doorknob up to about the peephole, and I mean filthy, it's probably a high traffic apartment, and that is going to be the problem apartment in that building. I can almost guarantee it. Pay attention to the condition of the front doors. That is always your smoking gun. And the last thing we want to do is what we came to the building to do. Visit the vacants. Make sure you go inside each vacant that you have and make note of any issues. It could be small things that could be quickly taken care of with maintenance. Our entire point for doing this is to make sure that we can take a prospect through this building and to the vacant. So walk the vacants and make sure there are no issues that you would need to apologize to a prospect for. Everybody got it? Capiche? All right, let's move on to step 3.